I've been living a lie. For years, I thought of myself as a fan of the Monkey Island games, despite having only played one. I'd gotten into the beginning of the fourth as a teen, and liked it enough to start researching all the wikis for the rest of the story, filtered down to bits and pieces that sounded cool and funny and weird. I bought the Telltales, bought the remasters, got distracted, and didn't finish any of them. Why? I do not recall, it could be anything. And still thought, oh look, I'm the Monkey Island fan. Check me. Well, now I've played all 5, with more experienced, partially keratoconic eyes, and frankly, I'm not the fan I thought I was. I've developed an entirely different understanding of the series, why it got people's attention, why its popularity stagnated even beyond getting tied up in a Disney buyout. You see, this isn't the funny wacky pirate series I'd been led to believe all these years. It's barely a series at all. The story of the game's genesis has been well told, born out of Ron Gilbert's fascination with the book On Stranger Tides by Tim Powers, a spooky pirate novel, as well as the Pirates of the Caribbean ride at Disneyland. He would wander about the world beyond it, what it might be like to escape the confines of the ride and go exploring, and it's these concepts mixed together that forms what most of us know as Monkey Island. Guybrush Threepwood washes ashore one day with dreams to become a pirate in a very piratey land. He gets involved with all the expected cliches, falls in love, sword fights, sails a ship, the good stuff, but the great gimmick at this point is Monkey Island's more modern, lopsided sense of humour and how it functions as a video game. The surprise and constant joy of discovering what it really was came in the act of how it feels, even now, more mechanically playful than people give it credit for. I've talked to many about how my love of the Metal Gear series comes from how, as you play the game kinda plays back. And that same appeal is right here in MI1, let me tell you. I've gotten used to most point-and-clicks maxing out hard on dialogue trees and combination puzzles that frankly border on ludicrous, but Monkey Island has a sense of logic that encourages you to participate with some naturalism, all while trying to make you laugh. It's not just use this with that or find the correct dialogue option, it's follow that guy, learn the format, keep switching flasks, haggle the price down, use this as a guide and then talk to it, make nice. Had to be grabbing a notepad, it's just nice to feel needed again, you know? This gives Monkey Island its own unique edge that being a regular swashbuckling adventure wouldn't have achieved. Our villain and heroine aren't exactly typical, one a ghost, the other a seasoned adventurer and governor, haughty but nice. The dialogue is super casual and funny. Sometimes the way alternative options are worded is enough to get a laugh. Insult sword fighting, learning the etiquette of what makes a good comeback, actually feels like I'm using this sponge in my head for a change to overcome these rapscallions, haha! Yes, it's a pirate adventure, but it's a video gamey-ass video game, and it's constantly asking itself how it can best transfer the excitement onto me as a point and click, keeping me at ease by throwing in a bunch of anachronisms and funny characters that I kept probing just to see what would happen. It's a way to experience the thrill of being a pirate without any of the real nastiness or grit that actually comes with the life, very in keeping with its Disney roots and kind of laughing at them. It's funny, charming, surprising, everything people told me it would be, and with that I assumed they would also be right about how, from what I'd heard, Monkey Island 2 was the funniest, most rib-tickling adventure game around. But Monkey Island 2 doesn't feel funny. Not exactly. Just deeply, deeply sad.
How did you get into this mess?
It's kind of a long story.
Oh, that's okay. I've got time.
The thing everyone remembers about Monkey Island 2 is the ending, because it's this horrible gut punch that refuses to give you any answers, and some believe it's shockingly random, out of place with the rest of the story, a complete left field response. I'm not sure why, because the entire game has the exact same feel.
When I return, I'll have riches galore and a whole new story.
Or you'll have died trying.
MI2 feels so disturbingly brittle, a hollow, disconcerting experience. While still an adventure, it's much less swashbuckling and more melancholic, in a world that's over itself, mean-spirited humour from characters who don't seem to care what happens anymore. Bullies and dictators all pose a great threat to the islands, but are never overthrown entirely. Corporate imagery has doubled, with pirates being way less piratical. Herman Toothroth has become a faux philosopher. Elaine wants nothing to do with you and holds parties full of complete assholes.
So then she looked at my treasure and said, "Nice booty," and I thought,
Well, then the pirate lady said, "Hey, it's a nice booty there."
In fact, Guybrush is something of an asshole epicenter. Still an enthusiastic pirate with a lot more experience under his belt and a dashing new look, but it suggested right from the start that he's more desperate than in Monkey 1. Clues revealing him to be an abject failure in an untold story that's never quite brought to the surface. And that's not even touching on the other thing going on here, you know, the other story not being told.
The arm bone's connected to the head bone.
Wow, they're good.
I liked MI1 a lot because it was a very playful game, extremely funny, deconstructing the nature of itself and trying to come up with new mechanical ways to make me laugh. MI2 is not that. In fact, I'd say mechanically it's probably a lot shallower, more like a regular point and click where all the answers are more accessible, and less reliant on systems unique to itself, though even those exceptions are less intense than the original's active nature. That's dropped in favour of a heavier focus on art and writing, which is no bad thing unto itself, nor is it not always funny. It can be a very funny game, but it's not the laugh riot I was sold on, and I sort of absolutely 100% loved it. There's a creepy thrill to MI2 I've never felt before, not because of the, you know, spooky boo stuff, because the whole game feels lifeless. I'm less juddery about the creepy zombie stuff than I am the real zombies, the dead-eyed hucksters, unenthused about the world of pirates and just trying to sell their wares.
3-hour tours.
Even the colour palette is scarier. All those extra gigs and bits used to give Monkey 2 a surreal appearance. I can't quite put my finger on it. Somebody in the comments will do it. Somebody in the comments always manages this. When you think of it that way, and the series' origins, and the demand there must have been for a sequel that the team weren't even sure they could entirely fulfill, I think this attitude makes more sense, and makes the ending that much more powerfully unsettling.
What's going on?
We're scolding you for running off. Your mother and I were very concerned.
Like anyone else, I wanted to know more, so I went ahead and did a lot of extensive reading, and yeah, I'm very on board with the world of Monkey Island not being real. While there is a hook to suggest that the ending is an illusion, apparently an out Gilbert gave for a potential sequel, with or without him, most of the evidence points to him wanting to add that layer since Game 1, which when replayed also comes across as a child wandering into a theme park. Blundering into a ride's secret magical world. Lots of documented evidence on that one. It's suggested that the jokes in MI1 are actually sometimes not jokes, and there are huge lists of how many anachronisms in both games correlate to theme park imagery more than anything else. Even the inside jokes hit nearer to that these days. So now 2 breathes an entirely new kind of life into 1, and makes both games a great loop of intrigue. A lot of people are keen to write this off as haha funny joke and funny game series, and yeah, they are funny jokes, but they're way too intentionally directed at a bigger joke, the mother of all jokes, one you're meant to respond to with big whoop. That's not to say I don't think there isn't and shouldn't be another sinister level to that. Of course, it's too good that whatever response you choose at the end will be overwritten by Chucky's answer.
You boys didn't get in any trouble now, did you?
No, sir.
I also don't believe Monkey 2 has a conclusive ending, another thing some people want to lean on. I just believe it's the beginning of the end in discussing why Guybrush would want to escape this reality to begin with. There's an underlying story here about Guybrush's parents, who want to make a point of how good to him they are in a way that makes him seem ungrateful, only they might also be dead, which makes no sense. Was he abandoned? Or wait, he has parents? Does he have, are these his parents and then a brother? And Ron said, oh, I get it. Ron's clues suggest Guybrush is adopted, his real parents having passed away and Chucky being his half-brother, which is maybe why their relationship is so adversarial, and also why, perhaps, Guy would want to escape to a world unlike his own, especially one that, say, he really enjoyed visiting on his first ride-through, sitting in the car with new kids around him, brought out of his reverie on occasion by a nasty half-brother poking him in the back, and then sneaking onto the ride a second time in a disguise to meet all the cool pirates, only to discover none of them actually care about the world they're employed to represent because none of them are real. Well, TLDR, Game 1 feels like you're on the ride, and Game 2 feels like you've snuck behind the scenes. The progression between the two games becomes about how our illusions as a child can be shattered, the thrill of experiencing a ride you love for the first time, only to see all the flaws the more you do it, the more you obsess, and eventually, the tragedy of having to return to your normal life. How purple. Yeah, this is fitting into a lot of my philosophies, huh? Purple feelings, theme parks. Am I a time traveler? Is Ron Gilbert me? I'm sorry about the cave, guys. I'll do better next time. I think those mixed feelings, as the creators put it, that very 70s ending, they mesh with everything the two games had been doing up until that point. Some see this as a cop-out, equivalent to, and it was all a dream, but I believe this points to more valuable discussion that validates everything we did in a totally different way, one that isn't in danger of not still being funny. Bittersweet, if anything. What drives us to these fantasies? What do we get out of them if they're not real? After all, the video game we're playing isn't real. But what if they are real and comment on our experiences in reality? Isn't reality just a big theme park anyway? Yeah, alright. There was a point being made here that a follow-up was begging to explore, but unfortunately that's not what happened. Ron left, taking his interpretation of events with him. Art director Bill Tiller, who would be employed to work on the next Monkey Island project, spilled his side of the beans, claiming that as far as he'd been told, yes, Ron wanted it to be a child's imagination, with a hook in place to generate the possibility of sequels. And then he said, "The secret being that the whole Monkey Island world is imagined sucks. Why? Because we want the world of Monkey Island to be real, not in a kid's imagination." This is the problem with all that comes afterwards. It's not that the following Monkey Island games are terrible, far from it. They are perfectly well-intentioned, entertaining stories with decent jokes and puzzles. You get what you paid for. What they aren't, as much as they'd like to be, are remarkable games at all evocative of the mysterious appeal of the first two. And worse, they actually feel way more inaccessibly esoteric by trying to establish themselves so hard as part of this complex lore, even as a joke, which is a long way of saying, they're okay. The irony is that Curse of Monkey Island is something of a great introduction to a series for newcomers when it starts. The new look deliberately caters to a wider audience, an accessible toon style that was, at the time, a huge marketing flex, and it is quite fun to look at. Major players Guybrush, Elaine, and LeChuck are established very quickly as part of an ongoing soap opera. Based on what you see here, you could put the three of them anywhere and let the dynamics kinda write themselves.
Sail with me, and I'll make you queen of the dead.
I can't. I'm washing my hair tonight.
I'm not sure I hate that, and I think it's almost impossible to imagine LeChuck without always thinking of him taking on a new form now. That's great. Flame Demon Beard is great. What a character. We should just meme generate all my punchlines at this point. Bloody hell. All in all, it's on some level in keeping with what we've come to expect. A pirate adventure with lots of anachronisms that, if you're moderately generous, you could say fit within the overall grand plan. There's good ideas here. It makes it very hard to dislike. The cast are strong, that's another plus, with a talent pool of some pretty big VO names, all things considered. It's not often that giving a silent character a proper voice really works, but I don't find myself put off by the choices for those we've already met. Except maybe Stan, who's, well, I've only really liked one of the voices he's gotten. I think when people are casting, they mistake salesman for game show host, and it's the former delivery I'm here for.
Welcome to Stan's previously owned coffins. We handle the dead for a lot less bread.
Celebrity merchandise is always a good investment, especially if you suspect that the celebrity in question is about to become a wind chime in the gallows.
Well, I don't plan on dying today.
And I didn't plan to wear the same jacket for 20 years, but here we are.
Dominic Armotto's great because, yeah, Guybrush is full of youthful optimism, but he's also got a bit of a cheeky, underhanded mean streak, a quick-talking balance Armotto was born to take on. This was made even more apparent when the remasters decided to add in full voice acting, allowing him to prove how well his voice was suited to the dialogue and letting him retroactively become the voice of Guybrush from the very start. And this is possible while using the original graphics and music on the second game. An ideal way to play.
A woodchuck should chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood, as long as a woodchuck would chuck wood.
Oh, shut up.
You know Dom's a restaurant critic now. Hit him up for the special, it's probably chicken. Where Curse absolutely falls down is in making the series feel so dry. Unlike this guy's back, that's foul. While the visuals are nice and plenty of moments lend a smile, it's not as sharp as the two games that came before, and worse, it seems intent on talking itself into oblivion. I'm someone who likes to exhaust all options in a point and click, because I figure if they made the effort to put it there, it's my duty to find it and get more content to enjoy, and the best make me feel that I'm being constantly rewarded. In Curse, there's a lot I like, but I didn't really feel it was worth doing the full round trip for many of the options. Just not as funny as it seems to think it is. Maybe that's the stigma of point and clicks, who are trying to match the talents of the big boys of comedy who came before, which is easier said than done. Some of it is so laboured, so drawn out in its mediocrity, and certain parts, which people had been building up as being legendary, just kind of came and went.
You say you're nasty pirates, scheming, thieving, bad bushwhackers. From what I've seen, I tell you, you're not pirates, you're just slackers.
A pirate I was meant to be, trim the sails and roam the sea.
Stuck in my head, just not in my heart. But the most egregious offence is how eager it is to unpick Monkey 2's ending, at great length, and in one of the most upsettingly dull dialogue tree experiences of my life. And this is coming from a huge Earl Bowen fan.
I thought the treasure of Big Whoop was on Dinky Island.
Dinky Island be an atoll, just off the coast of Monkey Island, as he always connected by a maze of when the toaster tunnels that ran under the berry, he sold everything he owned and took so flashing lights on Dinky. When you found me Carnival, you were on Monkey Island.
Very tidy explanation.
Yeah, it doesn't want you to think the theme park is the subtext anymore. Now LeChuck just owns one. LOL. The pervading idea the game puts forward, that Monkey 2's ending sucked because it wasn't real, is replaced with a massive tome of exposition, trying to craft it into this super elaborate lore that tries to be both a purposely convoluted joke and an attempt to draw out all this new interest in the franchise's world. But it's so overextended, so impossible to connect, and devoid of decent punchlines beyond, hey, isn't Monkey Island so kooky, that it's neither funny nor exciting. It's just a lot of noise. A bit like me. Escape from Monkey Island is probably the worst of the two though. Already less appealing than Curse because the style hasn't been future-proofed, unlike the other game developed on the same engine, and now pressing hard on the continuity backpedal in what I think was an attempt to recapture more of Monkey 1's qualities, where back on Melee Island, the old crew gets a bigger role, as well as a heavier emphasis on the commercialism present in 1 and 2.
No, really, grog me.
No, really. ID.
This has its bright spots, being developed by the creators of the excellent Sam & Max Hit the Road game, and as mentioned it was my first point and click, so definitely had something going for it to keep me interested. Some of the puzzles early on are genuinely creative, and there's enough decent gags strewn across I mentally come back to now and then in my head.
Doesn't Hugo miss being a pirate?
Not especially, no. Although sometimes Hugo misses the wind in his face. And the wenches. And Hugo misses the grog. And the decks covered with the blood of Hugo's enemies. But other than that, no, not a thing.
The villain, Ozymandias, is somewhat topical for the time, a Rupert Murdoch stand-in buying up the islands, and who can't be beaten in insult fights because he's literally too Australian.
You're not within cooey of beating me.
I'm sure that was a stinging insult, but I don't know why.
Aha, but therein lies the rub. These gags don't add up. It has been argued that the game still serves the concept of being lost within a theme park. In this case, a commentary on corporate growing pains that the Disneylands underwent during the Eisner era. And while that seems to have a strong case behind it, there are unmistakable parallels, it doesn't have much confirmed consistency or have anything particularly interesting to say on the subject. Nor does it show Guybrush and Elaine reacting to it in any way that ties into the original twist, unless you really want to stretch a point. Instead, it's people cracking all manner of jokes, further efforts spent on plot revelations that are only there to be revelations, and meandering along a path which throws so much at us that it starts to lose its point. It could be about anything. And it is. I mean, I've seen people use the mandrill gag to call the game wholly redeemable because it's so highbrow, but I don't know, it seems perhaps a bit late to be making fun of the islands becoming more hardcore corporate when they've always been that way. I mean, for God's sake, the first major fourth wall breaking joke is a pirate lighting up when you offer him the opportunity to sell you on Loom, TM. The problem with both these games saying comedy game series no limits comes here with a major case of diminishing returns, especially as, this time around, a bit like Curse, it takes the whole insult fighting thing to stupidly drawn out heights. You know, 2 kinda dropped this gag for a reason. I've already been battered by jokes and ideas from all sorts of angles with the ever-scaling dialogue trees, so I'm more exhausted than amused by Planet Threepwood, the Church of LeChuck, Monkey Combat, and this. It's a lot. For most, the sequels are just the usual point-and-click business, but playing the originals and how fresh they still feel really illuminates how much the later games have remained stuck in far too comfortable a niche. Bill Tiller, who said kinda sucks if it's all a dream, has made his own games, some directly riffing on the Monkey Island brand, which are compellingly drawn, but tellingly thin. It's not hard to like something like A Vampire Story on the surface with its setup and decent art direction, but all the good stuff is buried under quagmires of uninteresting, not terribly funny dialogue trees and and dull puzzles, something I think most point-and-clicks after Monkey 2 are guilty of. I don't want to rag on Bill too much. It's not all on him things worked out this way, and he's long since admitted he'd rather see Gilbert's take moving forward, but I think his games best represent the flip side to writing off Monkey 2's intentions. Cramming endless sequel plans and lore into a game does not make it any deeper or more compelling. It just makes it intimidating, especially if someone who might otherwise buy more decides halfway through playing, I can't be arsed with this. This applies to all the creators who thought the best way to move forward was to write off the twist, because your alternative, haha it was just a ride brah, that is a much closer equivalent to the just a dream problem, where the jokey explanation is so bloated, so outside even the disconnect of disbelief established by the series, that it becomes equally meaningless. I think about the ending of 2 so much, and care so little for the tidy wrap-up of 3. And more importantly, and this is the big thing here, it's not very funny. Looking back, I think Curse should have been a spin-off or reboot, and it was in the perfect position to be so. All you'd have to do is take the idea that, well, if Monkey Island is a theme park ride, it's developed its own franchise within that universe that loads of games and stories could be based around, kinda like in real life. It would be a very Monkey Island way to keep itself alive while winking at the audience, and you know, not have Ron Gilbert having to evoke 3A in front of his dream third game. Even the numerology looks sad now. As much as I love the world of Monkey Island, I love it even better when it might be more than it appears. More than just wacky pirates, the greater suggested commentary being what makes it a quintessential point-and-click speaking for the genre. With these two, what you see is pretty much what you get, without much of an effort to make this feel differently to the act of playing other point-and-clicks. And while we can argue how in many ways it's still about theme parks, it's not really about theme parks, you know? You feel this? You get me? Have I crossed that obnoxious line yet? Well, for some people that was a long time ago. And hey, if that's all part of a joke, great, I'm for that. But please, be a good joke.
Hey guys! I'm stuck down here! Herman? George? Jar Jar?
All of this puts Tales in kind of an interesting place. Tales is an attempt to address the fact that there is no longer any one accepted version of Monkey Island, trying to bring together both the broad soap opera established in Curse and the sense of mystery around Ron Gilbert's take, who was even consulted to give the project some added credibility. Is it entirely successful? No. Telltale had a policy of rapid turnaround in their games, which often limited their story and setting options, which really shows in this one. There are standout episodes, but there's also a lot of guff. A couple new characters I don't think were all that well conceived, and giving Guybrush 2 adoring women who are way out of his league, gosh, there's a really good joke here we just didn't have the time to break into, huh? The trouble is that, kind of like Escape, it's the voice of a company who were doing well with Sam and Max, and that way of thinking is very different from what I think works best for Monkey Island. If you go back and play Hit the Road against the original Monkey, you get more than just point-and-click humour. You get the difference between a laid-back stroll in the park exchanging Oscar Wilde quotes against skydiving off a cliff while watching Airplane on max volume and one of you's a dog. The thought that this approach is just as good again muddies the waters in hitting that monkey vein. But the thing is, those Sam and Max games are kinda good, and this series of games, while compromised, isn't terrible either. It's actually kinda funny. While still having the problem of diminishing returns the previous games were running into, so much dialogue thrown your way to sift through to get to the buried treasure, there's loads I wanted to hear. Returning characters aren't flung in randomly. They're appropriately used depending on the episode's hook, and some make a potentially tedious situation more bearable. Specifically the return of everyone's favourite.
Better call Saul, better call Saul.
I'll see you in court, Stan.
Hey, that's pretty funny.
I have to confess, I never really loved Murray, not as much as Curse wanted me to, but this game makes it work, building on the fact he thinks he has more power than he actually does by giving him pals who think the same, and it pays off. Derry Muppets.
In my day, I could turn a man to stone with a smirk. I can make blood boil with a scowl. And all I need is a reason. And lips.
What lifts this out of pure mediocrity is the use of the leads, probably some of the most interesting attempts to develop the characters they've had in a while, and I feel like there are attempts to tie that into the original 2 games' intentions. The Voodoo Lady revelation seems to line up with all the previous titles, as well as, potentially, whatever interpretation you have of what's going on in the series altogether. LeChuck takes on another new form, a human, and while they kind of bungled that in Escape, which wasn't that interested in using it as more than a disguise, in Tales we explore the idea of a reverse LeChuck. How he, Guybrush, and Elaine could all actually be great friends, which we believe in thanks to another stellar performance from the late great Kevin Blackton.
Oh yeah? Well, you fight like a...
Again, I think this dynamic also fits whatever interpretation you have of this series as a whole. There's plenty to read into, lots to validate you across the entire game, though I totally accept it's very probably just what I focus on.
Were you really worried about me? I mean, you did stop to chat with these fish people.
So, right, yeah, life is good to LeChuck. Guybrush, on the other hand, gets torn apart in his own quest to win back Elaine, eventually becoming both a ghost and a zombie, pushed further and further away from Elaine, and eventually dragged into an exhausting duel with the, of course, actually evil LeChuck, in a battle that echoes their first so many years ago. It's worth noting that your time spent in the afterlife in this episode has a lot of interesting features that point to a particular idea, and once you use it to help secure your victory, the final sound you hear before LeChuck dies might seem, well, familiar. Maybe I'm just going deaf. Now, Telltale never made any more because around that time, Disney bought LucasArts and effectively shut down all games production. But even if it wasn't affected by the Disney stranglehold, Tales feels dragged down by uncertainties, and in a horrible way that's become the appeal of the series, a fundamental change brought about by the split in priorities across 20 plus years. Playing everything after 2 might make you wonder why the series didn't keep on, but playing those before gear your brain for a different frustration, one that we will likely never see closure for in our lifetimes. Doesn't have the staying power of Bubsy, you see. Didn't make 1 billion views on YouTube videos, you see. Ain't got meme power, you see. He's a cat. Hey ha, hey ha, hey ha, 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 ha. Perhaps it's chasing the secret that keeps it fresh, but at this point I think it's given Monkey Islander's somber tone of a series that will never truly feel fulfilling. The secret being that once you start getting involved, trying to take revenge, you too will be cursed, and the only way to escape is to, sadly, give up and live to tell the tale. Yeah, I thought that sentence was a lot smarter in my head. Is this why I didn't commit too deeply before? Did I anticipate that getting close to it would have the whole secret fall down around me? Caught in a trap that I can't point and click my way out of? This isn't funny. This isn't funny at all. I shouldn't be waxing poetic about a game with a rubber chicken with the pulley in the middle, but here I am, you know, unpicking the fabric of this fine leather jacket, thread by thread. Oh, I'm such a fan. I'm such a fan. I know so much about this series. I can do all the quotes. I'm such a funny, ha-ha man who likes this game. It's okay, it's just jokes. There's no point. It's all just a game. It's hard Hey everyone, thanks again, another weird video. I would like to thank everyone who has stayed a patron in the weird times. It's been really nice to have people fund this work, and so I can keep making it. I'm excited. I got a lot more videos out. This is a video I've been wanting to do for a long time, and these names are the reason I did it. I don't know what this voice is, and then you can watch the other thing I did and made. That would be funny. And now I'm going to go and be unfunny somewhere else.
Banang!